Hi everyone, welcome. We're down here in my wormery preparing and checking on a couple worm bins. I jotted down some notes about them. The older bin over here is now 219 days of age, the younger one 159. And for the older system, it's feeding number 20 today. And you can see in my notes over here, I'm toying with the idea of possibly setting this system up here after today's feeding to be foraging, which usually means just checking in periodically, make sure everything looks okay, but not feeding anything new based on the assumption that all the leftover bedding and food scraps from previous feedings are still in sufficient amounts in the system to keep them going comfortably. And then the hope is that they're going to break it all down to a really nice level where there's very little debris. Feeding zone indicator showing us where we last fed. Right down the middle over here is a little bit of a depression, a little trench. Here too we marked with a feeding zone indicator, a coffee filter to show where we last fed. Today's feeding, we've got some potato peel, some cantaloupe rind, a couple soiled napkins or paper towels, and along with the coffee I'm feeding them, we've got replacement coffee filters too. So we could just reuse these feeding zone indicators as supplementary bedding down in the feeding zone. And let's see, I'm trying to remember. I did review the video from the last check-in. I wonder if I can remember what we fed. Sometimes this is a good clue. There you go. That gave it away right there. Certain types of things that you feed to your worm bins are going to be riddled with seeds and they'll start, sprouting. Pumpkin, tomato, certain things are just always going to do it. That's almost a given. And I believe that the last feeding these guys got was a bunch of tomato from my garden. There was a frost expected, so I pulled stuff off, all the plants, everything. And anything that just didn't seem like it was really too good, I would just sort of set it aside. Luckily there wasn't too much of it, but enough of it to provide the wormies with a nice feeding last time, 13 days ago. And yeah, feeding number 20 over here in the 219-day-old system. Some of these leftover bits of paper. Yeah, today's feeding for these guys, for the older bin, we'll give them their food. We'll give them their cantaloupe rinds and their coffee. But as far as bedding goes, other than a replacement feeding zone indicator and then, the bedding that we're just recycling in a different purpose, we're just going to stick to the leftover bedding that's already in here and sort of start setting the stage for a nice foraging where they're still getting a feeding today, but no supplementary bedding. I think that's a good way to get the foraging of this system off on a good foot. I do believe that the next time we check in here, we might just be taking a peek to make sure things are progressing okay, but probably not feeding. And then at that point, I guess we'll possibly start just seeing these systems as not so much buddy bins anymore, but perhaps the older one breaking free and making a sprint for the finish line, and allowing the younger one over here to, continue for a little while longer, a few more feedings at least. We'll have to see where that leads. Every now and then I bump into a little hunk of corn cob, and I've just been trying to see if I can bust that stuff up every time I encounter it. I did find some over there too. And since I've been doing it so frequently anymore, the ones that I do find are usually pretty small already, having been broken up a number of times. Look at that. Here's actually a one that I haven't even had a chance to break down the long way yet. So that was still pretty fresh. I guess I probably just couldn't do it last time. It was probably still too tough. After time, this stuff gets really easy to break, softens up, loosens up. There's another piece. Save some for another day, right? Don't have to break it all up. My mom did actually provide me with a bunch of 6 6 or 7 ears of corn. But they were kind of, I don't know, sitting in their own juices already. They've been sitting around for a while. They were pretty nasty and a little stinky, and I just decided instead of putting them aside and giving them to the wormies down here in the basement, those just went straight outside to my outdoor compost barrel, which I think was a good place to put it. So here in the older system, we'll give them this old feeding zone indicator. There was a couple other things over here I thought, but that's all the bedding we're going to give them. Here in this younger system, I've got my prepared bedding right here behind me, so we'll continue as normal. So, I don't know, was there anything like that? I thought there was something that we pulled off the top surface over here too, didn't we? I don't know. It doesn't matter so much. Let's also get the leftovers we encountered down there. Some of these little tomato seedlings trying to grow. Get them back down where the fun's going to be. And here and there I do still see some skins of some of the tomato that we fed last time. A couple worms still playing around with the seeds over there. And who knows, we still might see some more of that happening. Some of these seeds actually starting to try to grow down here in the worm bin. Wouldn't be too surprising. So these paper towels can also go in as supplementary bedding, but you know what, we'll give them to the young bin over here. I think the old bin's got all the bedding it needs for now. And we'll try to get it off to a good start, to a nice session of foraging. Sort of a slimmed down, kind of limited feast today, which I guess would be its 20th and last feeding, because then after foraging would come an attempt to try to migrate the worms out of their environment or separate them in some other way, whether it's a quickie light separation, which I guess in a way is a migration too. We're just kind of forcing them to want to dive down into the material that they're inhabiting to escape from the bright lights that you're shining on them. Ooh, but let's not forget, we've got my bedding over here too. Even though we gave them a couple nice napkins over here. Ooh, nice and soggy. Okay. A little bit more soggy than I'm used to having. Might have to throw some dry in there to sop it up, but the worms will appreciate that, don't you think? I think so. Then we can start coming in here with the rest of the goodies. In recent times I've been supplementing the feedings that I provide of coffee, like what you saw me do right here, and what we're going to do right here too. Supplementing it with a little bit of something, anything sprinkled into it, just to make it not so boring. But I don't have anything to sprinkle in today, so whatever. Boring coffee it is. And I don't know. That's it, right? That'll be the last feeding for the older system. Excuse me. Making a mess here. Let's make sure I don't accidentally scoop out any little wormies. Send them on a wild ride. But I think before we actually start covering up, let's set these feeding zone indicators aside. At least that's what they're going to be at the end. But as long as we're covering up, we're just going to sort of poke around a little bit. All we really got a chance to check out was the feeding zone. So after we've gotten them covered up nice and neatly, we can perhaps take a peek in the rest of the bin to see how things are looking. Things look good. This is also my excuse to take some of this nice top covering leafy material and blend it in a little bit. Instead of having it sitting out here relatively dry on the surface, it can be part of the bedding, extra food for the worms to nibble on. I'm assuming it just helps it all break down a lot more quickly that way. A little bit of aeration of the material too, I suppose, at the same time. And obviously the opportunity to check it out, take a quick look, see how things look. Sometimes to me it just seems like a pretty obvious telltale of a healthy environment is just a whole bunch of worms hanging out in it, seeming to be content to be in it. And that's what I've seen so far in the two outskirts on that edge. Let's do a quick peek over here too, and then we'll be done. Yeah, happy, healthy looking worms everywhere. here in the younger bin, we'll just keep on adding a little bit of bedding each time we come in here. Over here, we're done. We're just going to let it ride. Definitely keeping the covers on. Keeping the top covering plastic on. The plastic does a good job keeping even stuff at the surface relatively damp. And I don't know, the stuff crumbles so nicely. Here and there it feels like it might be a little bit muddy. It's sticky in some places, wants to adhere to my glove and whatever. In places it also felt like it was wanting to clump to itself a bit. But as you can see, it doesn't take much. Just a little brush with my fingertips and it all wants to flake apart. So that's pretty much where I think it should be. A little bit more damp over here is fine. That's just going to help the system remain nice and productive, chugging along, breaking stuff down for us. And whether or not we're even checking in on them as buddies anymore is questionable. Maybe we just start treating them as two separate systems, because they are going to be handled differently. But that's it for our check-in with the Red Wiggler 60 days in age difference. That's the only thing that's novel about these systems, is that they're buddied up, but they perhaps never should have been. Whatever, who cares? Alright everyone, that's it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.